We'd now like to shift from the African continent to South Asia and put the spotlight on Bangladesh. So we've been listening to some great presentations of how the policy systems approach has worked in different African countries. USAID, of course, has been investing in agricultural development for decades in Bangladesh. Robert talked about that in his presentation. But I'm curious, what is different about the policy systems approach? What are we doing differently? And how is it going so far? Fahim.
Right, Vishalina. So thanks for the question. So I think Bangladesh, we're really at a transformational point in time. It's scheduled to become a lower middle income country by 2025, and a middle income country by 2040. And so there's a lot of energy going around in Bangladesh at this moment in time. So this is my third posting in Bangladesh, and it's very, very different to when I was first posted in the early 2000s, and then again from 2006 to 2012. And what I'm seeing is, there are some very strong system actors coming in. But the conversations are now gravitating towards things like what is going to be the next big industry in Bangladesh. So currently it's ready-made garments industry, as you know. It's probably one of the largest producers of garments in the world. But Bangladesh is now in a really great position because it is the third largest producer of vegetables in the world. It's the largest producer of freshwater fish, and it's now looking at basically how it's going to propel that agricultural industry onto an international stage. So it's looking at, so the conversations now are going around good agricultural practices, looking at export industries, looking at food safety issues, a whole variety of different things that's really going to allow Bangladesh to become a major player when it comes to international, agriculture domains. So what we do is we're looking at basically working with these major system actors to see how we can actually help in facilitating that process. So there's three major things that we do. So we're looking at facilitating complex policy dialogues. And when we say that, we have 5 major stakeholders that we actually work with. So we're looking at the government, of course, private sector, who's gaining a lot of strength now in Bangladesh. We're looking at communities, we're looking at development agencies and research academia. So basically, if I give you an example and kind of walk it through. So with the seed pillar, that's something that we've been actually concentrating on for the past 12 to 14 months. And with that, what we did was we actually worked with ground sourcing, information from all the zones of influence and zones of resilience. So there's 5 major regions in Bangladesh for that, where we had extensive consultation processes with those 5 major stakeholders. Understanding what were the complexities when it came to policies, policy systems, what are the challenges, bottlenecks, opportunities, those kind of things. We then validated that information again within each of those 5 regions, and then we brought it up to the national stage where we had extensive consultations with key informants across the country, experts, policymakers, and so on. And so again, we had a validation at a national stage as well. All of this was not just about crowdsourcing information, but it was also about building movements. So it's really working with those different kind of stakeholders, understanding their kind of issues, and also kind of ironing out those kind of confusions between stakeholders, because there was a lot of confusion where the government was holding a perspective and the private sector was holding another perspective. But it was really a lack of information that was actually, kind of holding back a lot of those conversations. So eventually what happened was that actually brought us to a stage where we could actually bring together what we termed an executive roundtable, bringing together 25 of the leading technocrats and private sector stakeholders to have a conversation on what were the major kind of issues around the seed sector. And there were 10 issues that came up, and we had a watershed moment because by the end of that round table, we converged on 10 recommendations that were, kind of agreed by all the different stakeholders. So that was unique in itself. It was something that was what we, like I said, we consider a watershed moment. So that led to basically then developing a policy brief that we then submitted to the Minister of Agriculture, basically for his consideration in terms of looking at how to deal with those kind of 10 major policy areas. So that's one piece around the policy issues. The other thing that we look at is basically, and you've heard this from my colleagues as well, in terms of really working on sensitizing or helping to facilitate a greater understanding of what are those kind of policy issues that people need to be kind of thinking about. And what we found was that the word policy was being kind of used quite widely without really understanding exactly what it was that we're trying to actually look at. And what we did was we found out there was really, it's the acts, the ordinances, the rules, and the statutory regulatory orders that was really kind of critical. So the acts and the rules are the policies which are enforceable. And then you have the SROs coming in terms of how you hold people accountable for those things. So what that enabled us to do was then to start working with through the policy actors themselves, where they were then taking a role in sensitizing their own colleagues, their own systems, when it came to government in the different regions at the national level, exactly what it was that they were kind of mandated to do, and how they would actually hold people accountable was again being kind of talked about and actually understood. At the same time, when it came from the client side of the table, we're looking at, in this case, seed vendors. So there's almost 40,000 seed vendors across the country. For them to understand basically what were the policies that they could actually kind of rely on, and what was it that they could really capitalize on when it came to the policy area within Bangladesh. So with a great understanding of those policies, systems or policy, the existing policies, that enables a greater kind of a leverage in terms of developing that agricultural sector around seed. And a final area was around leadership capacity building. So that's something that we're still working on. And again, looking at those kind of champions, those leaders who can really start strengthening their own systems and their own kind of areas for greater and more sustainable growth. So let me stop there. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you, Fahim. I think that was a really comprehensive response, and it was great to hear about your experience with moving beyond collaboration to talk about accountability. And I think that sort of captures the essence of what we mean by collective action. So thank you for sharing that example with us.